And I'm alive! Holy crap! I got my Bugs Bunny shirt on. We got Daisy the dog. Say hi, Daisy. What a what a couple of weeks it's been. I'm gonna tell you, I watch the crap on YouTube, so you don't have to. That should be my slogan now. That should be the slogan of this channel. I watch the crap all over on YouTube, left, right, front, center. I don't care. I watch a little bit of everything. Why? Because I'm a human being and I'm not a dumbass. And you're gonna think to yourself, well, does that mean that I am? Well, maybe you might be if if you think that the world goes one way or the other. I think I need to clarify that right off the bat because I know there's going to be a few people who are going to be saying, what the fuck are you talking about, Mike? What is this all about? Well, I'm going to tell you. The problem with politics, the problem with opinions, the problem with everything in life that goes on is nothing is ever, ever one way. Okay? Labels, for example. When we put labels on us, like saying we're conservative or we're liberal or whatnot, it's an attempt, unfortunately, usually partly for us to identify who we are for people that we want to associate with. We want to create some sort of narrative that we associate with a specific group that represents a majority of our values. So the labels have become more like pejorative, representing what we tend to support, what the values we tend to hold most in common. But it's not as simple as that. It's just never not as that simple. And what it comes down to is, I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I always consider myself for the most part to be conservative because most of my values in terms of like the conservative part in terms of fiscal restraint and responsibility and accountability, I think are very good values that society should hold. I mean, the fact that we should hold people accountable is great, but then we have to look at the nuances of it. What about people that aren't able to, through circumstances no fault of their own, be accountable or be responsible or be whatever? Of which, I'm one of them in a way. I fucked up. I borrowed money that I shouldn't have borrowed. But why do we do this? Why do we all fall into these traps of making these types of judgment calls and mistakes so easily? Because one of the things about being in a capitalist society is capitalism encourages greed. Capitalism encourages consumption. Capitalism is built on greed and consumption and jealousy and all these things, which is sort of the dark side of it. I mean, the good side of capitalism is everyone gets an opportunity to get things, and we have opportunities to own things, and there's less people that are excluded from the opportunity of being the largest, greatest good of the most of the people. Mass consumption, the things that capitalism spun, like mass production. It means to make things that would normally, if they were made by hand or made by one at a time, could not be attainable to most of us because it's just not affordable. It's just not economically feasible to have a person sit there as an artist saying handcraft. Well, we can automate the process. Now, this is part of what capitalism brought: the idea of mass production, the idea that everyone could have the opportunity to be rich, and all these other things. But unfortunately, there's another dark side of capitalism. It's called the business of people wanting to give you the ability to have things now instead of having them later when you could afford them, when you had the means to acquire them. Credit. What's credit? Credit is somebody saying to you that I'm going to give you the ability to buy these 6 oxen now, and you don't have to pay them for today, but I want you to give me the equivalent of what 7 oxen cost later. That's credit. That's pretty much the essence of all credit. Even the modern credit system today, it pretty much works that. I'll give you 70s now, 60s now, but you're going to give me the equivalent of 70s later. At some later future period of time. If you don't, then you're going to owe me, and then we're going to have to have words. Most of those words involve going to court and then eventually to jail. Very early credit system. If this would have been something I did in the early days of that, I would have been in jail, no questions asked, or I would have been maybe sold into slavery, or any number of things that could possibly have been done to me. But at some time, as civilization became more refined, we realized that that particular act of slavery and jail and all these sort of punishments, maybe losing limbs in some countries, whatnot, were very draconian means of solving or dealing with a problem created by capitalism itself. The overwhelming desire to consume things that we don't have the means to consume, that we haven't earned the means to consume yet. So that's part of, that's one of the things about capitalism that I want to talk about more in later chapters. But I just want to discuss that as a quick aside. But what I really want to talk about, the thing that really sort of has been gelling in my head about, rather than about the fact that, like I say, I'm a libertarian, which means I take the liberty. I think libertarian basically means I take the liberty to borrow from wherever I want to borrow, and my worldview is a nuanced one as opposed to a focused on one thing. But at the end of the day, all of us, as far as politics, forces us to polarize ourselves into one particular ideology or one group of ideology, or one person that has the closest framework of ideologies themselves. Has their own firm created nuance, which has been packaged and sold under a brand name. In this case, conservatives are just brand names for groups of people with different ideologies or groups of people that have similar ideologies, where the predominant ideology tends to be considered either conservative or liberal. So that's a whole different discussion together. That's something for another time to discuss. I'm not going to talk about right now, but that's something that might be an interesting topic to discuss. Maybe some people can let me know whether or not they want to have a discussion about politics, the nuances between conservatism, liberalism, and all the sort of landscape in between that, as far as the typical libertarian view of politics, what democracy was supposed to be about in the first place. What I want to talk about today is about something very more fundamental. I've been hearing so much about climate change, and I've been all over the place in terms of my feelings about how I feel about what my feelings should be about it, how I think we should respond to it. And I've been listening to a lot of people. I listened to a gentleman named Thunderfoot just yesterday, and he had brought up a very interesting point. When you burn one torch of fuel, it produces a certain amount of pollution, carbon dioxide. You're converting carbon that's stored in a form into carbon dioxide gas. Maybe it'd be simple to offset that by putting a couple trees up. Problem solved. You think that's pretty simple. But if you keep adding to it and adding to it and add to exponential over time, it becomes a race where you're chasing after a phenomenon to solve a problem, which you potentially can't win. And that's what he was arguing. He said that in fact we got to a point now that we can't even keep up with the increases in this type of pollution in the world in terms of how it affects our environment, with putting all this carbon into the air that was being captured all this time in the form of oil, in the form of whatever form has been captured. We're overdoing what the planet Earth typically can handle in terms of carbon release, the carbon molecules release, and conversion to oxygen, the sort of natural circle of life. We've got to a point now we're doing it so quickly that how are we going to be able to find strategies to combat that, to at least stop the effects from getting any worse, maybe neutralize any future effects so that we can sort of get things under control, and eventually maybe, potentially, if we can, find technologies that we can reverse some of the damage that human beings in the listings of life has happened as far as the things that are involved directly by us in our own personal lives and personal actions. So I'm thinking maybe Thunderwood's got a part of it, but he's also got a part around the way. The fact is, the deforestation and growing of human being societies, the trees would be helpful if we didn't keep cutting them down. If we keep cutting the damn things down, building more and more civilization, there's less and less nature. There's less and less nature to do what the thing that nature does best. And there's other consequences that too. Less environment for animals to live. More and more animals becoming extinct because humans have a need for taking over so much of the territory that we encroach on territory that's naturally meant for animals out there that would be able to have this space for themselves, and we've been taking it over slow and so on. And so we humans are very short-sighted when it comes to anything involving the climate and the environment. There's so many things we're doing wrong. The question is, how do we stop doing the bad things? How do we just stop making it any worse? Is the first goal. How do we eventually reverse the cycle of what we've done, and what are the repercussions to humanity in the way we do things, and how our standard perceptions of things like the standard of living, the ability to live the lives that we're so used to in the Western world, because it's most of the Western world, the capitalist parts of the world, and China now that's becoming westernized, and any nation is starting to finally become more westernized in terms of consumption economy, things like building things and throwing things away and using vehicles and fossil fuels and all the stuff that involved in modern society. As more and more parts of the world start doing that, each one of those parts of the world is becoming partly responsible through their own actions for this whole problem. It's not just one. So the problem is, if one part starts first and the other one doesn't, then it says, well, why should I do all the work and they take all the benefit? Well, as long as that type of methodology and framework is that worry about who's going to be the first to start and who's going to be the first to, and then if I do all this work and work all this time working hard to do this and nobody else is going to do it other than me, why should I bother? This is sort of the stalemate the world finds itself in. But then the thing is, we have to look at what strategies, what things can we do in the immediate term that are sustainable, doable, and can be build momentum that human beings can do, that we can incentivize to do very quickly. Now, taking people's cars away and telling them that people who charge too much fuel doesn't really, we've proven time and time again, that really doesn't incentivize, because gas prices have been crawling exponentially for a long, long time, long before this tax came in for the liberals, it just made things even worse. So these things have been going up and up and up. Inflation's been happening on everything, including gasoline, especially on gasoline, probably more so than any other type of thing, because of the fact of the OPEC alliance and the fact that the Arabs are determining, and the OPEC members, mostly Arabs, determine that they have to make as much money from the source because they eventually think it's going to run out. And they got to cash in on it when they got the opportunity. So when they see the price of everything else go up, they keep raising the price of oil more, because they're realizing that eventually, once the oil runs out, what do we got left? So this is one of the big things that's going on. We recognition that at some point in time, these resources that have been in the ground for millions of years will eventually run out. We will not have them anymore. We will be screwed about for all the vehicles and cars eventually will run out of fuel now if we're going to use natural organic oil from the ground that we found a long time ago, probably quite by accident, and we made great strides in making use of it and building the whole of our modern civilization since. So that's part of the problem why gas is expensive. The second thing is, of course, while gas was inexpensive, there was no incentive or motivation or emergency to finding alternatives eventually for it. Knowing that, first of all, it's going to eventually disappear anyway, and second of all, the fact is, nobody ever thought in the long term what the effects of civilization, industrialization, and things like the introduction of oil to the Industrial Revolution, how that evolved and changed dramatically how the Industrial Revolution was, from the era of using windmills and animal power and wind power and solar power and water power, the very first power sources that were organically that we just harnessed the power of what was happening in nature, and eventually decide, well, we need something a little bit more reliable, something that's more portable. We need something that's more robust, has more efficient amount of energy and all the things that these other sources just totally lack. Every one of these other natural energy sources lacks the main thing that makes oil and its derivatives the most powerful thing in the history of history. Now, we did have organic oils before. We still have organic oils. Like we talk about corn oil and talk about other oils that we mine from or those types of things. We can still burn those. We still got animal fats and that. There's oils organically that don't require us to dig up oil in the ground. But that's still using resources from the earth, and we're still burning them, and still creates the same problem. So the thing is, the problem of what we've been doing with this type of thing before has been happening for a long time. Ever since the human beings started burning wood, or started burning anything that released carbon into the air as a form of energy, much less our own farts, and the animals, the byproducts of human existence, and mammals and any animals that produce carbon, produce gas, all those things affect the environment, and there has to be a balance there. It's a question of, we've gotten this world so out of balance when it comes to the amount of people we have in the place, our stewardship of the planet in general in terms of humanity's in its existence, our overbearing need to propagate every space and take it over and make it ours. I mean, we at some point have to say, hey, we got too many humans here. To this planet is not able to sustain and maintain itself with the number of human beings that exist on this planet and the amount of encroachment that human beings have done to the natural animal order, natural order of nature. And this is probably the biggest problem. And then the second biggest problem is the other things we've done, our waste. How we done with the byproducts of capitalization and industrialization. All the waste we created. All the convenience waste we created. How we went from using renewable products to non-renewable products for the sake of ease and convenience. Listen, I'm going to have to go this time. My missus is calling me. I'm thinking I have a funny feeling because she's telling me she's on her way home. And I'm going to have to make this short. So, like, comment, subscribe. See you soon. Bye for now.